It has proven to be Disney's worst investment ever in the history of Disney investments. I mean, they've gone through various scandals with this girl. She has this underlying anger and hatred in her that always has to take it like one step too far.
There were Variety report being like, of course, what would you do when you have this narcissistic nightmare trying to ruin a film?
If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what?
Smart.
Pay her a couple $1 million, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
This is Rachel Zegler, who Disney decided would be brilliant in casting because, as Rachel Zegler says, her millions of fans will line up no matter what she does to see her. Look at this acting.
That at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
I'd say that this is one of Disney's biggest regrets ever. I mean, I checked, we've discussed it before. I checked Rotten Tomatoes, and the score is even lower than the last time we talked. Other movie companies are going to look at her and they're going to say box office poison. And a lot of this is due to her behavior leading up to the film's release.
Uniquely unlikable, but then it is actually a terrible film as well. So it's the double whammy.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. The controversies surrounding Disney's Snow White remake show that we are still in the thick of the culture wars. And then Rachel Zegler plays Snow White. I think Gal plays the... I was not a child, so I don't follow that. And Rachel Zegler, being 23 or whatever she is, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution.
Was Rachel Zegler the reason Disney's Snow White crashed and burned? Or is she just the scapegoat for a studio's massive misstep? Disney's 2025 live-action remake of its 1937 classic was supposed to be a dazzling reimagining, but it turned into a cultural firestorm. From casting backlash to viral sound bites, this fairy tale became a nightmare. Let's unpack the chaos and find out what really happened.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs, and dwarves want to work.
Disney had big dreams for Snow White. With a budget ballooning to $270 million, the studio aimed to reimagine the first ever animated feature for a modern audience. Directed by Mark Webb, the film promised stunning visuals, new songs, and a fierce Snow White who'd lead her kingdom, not just pine for a prince. Casting Rachel Zegler as the titular princess and Gal Gadot as the evil queen, Disney bet on star power to carry this ambitious reboot, but those dreams were about to hit a brick wall.
This golden employment opportunity for dwarves.
There's not that many scripts that come down the pike.
No, it's 7 of them.
That has, and there's seven dwarf jobs here.
Rachel Zegler was no stranger to the spotlight. Her breakout role as Maria in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story earned her a Golden Globe and whispers of Hollywood's next big thing. Critics raved about her soaring soprano and magnetic charm, making her a natural pick for Snow White. At just 23, she seemed poised to become a household name, with fans buzzing about her ability to bring heart and grit to the iconic princess. But not everyone was ready to crown her.
I think it was Peter Dinklage said this is, this is not right. This is demeaning. And they were like, what? We just want to work. We're dwarves.
The moment Zegler's casting was announced, the internet erupted. Snow White, a character described as having skin white as snow in the 1937 film, was now being played by a Latina actress. For some, this was a betrayal of the fairy tale's roots, sparking hashtags like Not My Snow White. Memes flooded X, comparing Zegler's red carpet looks to the animated princess with snarky captions. Others cheered Disney's move, arguing that a Latina Snow White opened the story to new audiences, proving fairy tales could evolve. The culture war was on, and it was only the beginning.
Can you tell us a little bit about your version of Snow White?
Yeah, I mean, Snow White is the girl you remember, but she's definitely made
for the modern age, and there's such an emphasis on what it really means to be the fairest of them all.
Then came the dwarfs, or rather the lack of them. Disney's decision to replace human actors with dwarfism with CGI magical creatures set off another bomb. Actor Peter Dinklage, known for Game of Thrones, called the move demeaning, slamming Disney for casting a Latina lead while sidelining dwarf actors. He argued it was a step backward, robbing performers of rare roles. Fans echoed his outrage, accusing Disney of hypocritical progressivism. The studio scrambled to justify the change, but the damage was done, and what happened next would make things even worse.
For Snow White, it's coming to terms with finding herself and finding her inner voice and finding a sense of agency so that she can be a just ruler and a wonderful queen, because there's another one in town.
Rachel Zegler didn't just step into the controversy, she lit a match. In a Variety interview, she declared, "It's no longer 1937, explaining that Snow White wouldn't be a damsel waiting for true love, but a leader forging her own path." Sounds empowering, right? Not to everyone. When asked about the prince, Zegler quipped that his 1937 kiss made him a stalker and hinted he might be cut entirely. Clips of her comments exploded on TikTok with fans of the original crying foul. To make matters worse, she admitted she'd only seen the 1937 film once, calling it unsettling. To many, this was proof she despised the classic. The hashtag #Snow White trended as viewers vowed to boycott, but there was more fuel for the fire.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
Rumors of a feud between Zegler and co-star Gal Gadot added a political twist. Zegler, outspoken about her support for Palestine, tweeted "Free Palestine" after the film's trailer dropped. Gadot, an Israeli-born former IDF soldier, held opposing views, leading to whispers of on-set tension. When Lebanon banned the film over Gadot's involvement, some speculated Disney pinned the blame on Zegler's activism to deflect from the film's woes. Reports surfaced of Disney hiring extra security for Gadot after threats, while Zegler faced her own wave of online hate. The clash turned Snow White into a geopolitical lightning rod, and the box office was about to feel the heat.
Literally no offense to anything. They're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
When Snow White hit theaters on March 21st, 2025, the numbers told a grim story. The film opened to $42 million, a fraction of its $270 million budget. By its 4th weekend, it had limped to $169 million worldwide, nowhere near the $625 million needed to break even. Critics gave it a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, slamming the CGI dwarfs and a disjointed story. IMDb was even harsher, with a 1.6 out of 10 score driven by 276,000 one-star reviews, prompting a rare warning about unusual voting activity. The review bombing mirrored backlash against The Little Mermaid, but Snow White's was on another level. Disney was staring at a $115 million loss, and fingers were pointing at Zegler. But was she really to blame?
They're remaking the movie. They just got rid of the dwarfs. Okay,
but what do they call them?
Why would they get rid of the dwarves though?
Magical creatures.
But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures.
Some called it a smear campaign. Lily Allen and Makita Oliver, on their podcast Miss Me, argued Zegler was unfairly targeted, noting that her boldness echoed Disney's own tales of standing up for beliefs. Others, like producer Jonah Platt, claimed Zegler's personal politics tanked the film, saying Disney had to reprimand her. The truth likely lies in the middle. Zegler's comments alienated fans, but Disney's choices, CGI dwarfs, a modernized plot, and a hefty budget, set the stage for failure. The studio's history of live-action remakes, like The Little Mermaid's underperformance, showed cracks long before Zegler spoke. Still, her sound bites became the lightning rod for a storm Disney couldn't control, and the fallout didn't stop there. Disney's response was swift and telling. Production on a live-action Tangled remake was paused, a clear sign the studio was rethinking its remake strategy. Insiders whispered that Snow White's flop could mark the end of Disney's live-action princess era, with safer bets like Lilo and Stitch on the horizon. Meanwhile, speculation swirled about Zegler's future. Some labeled her box office poison, with posts on X claiming Disney had canceled her. Yet her invite to the 2025 Met Gala and praise for her Snow White performance, described as spine-tingling by crew, suggested she wasn't down for the count. The question remained, could Disney and Zegler recover from this fairy tale gone wrong? So what's the real story behind Snow White's fall? Was Rachel Zegler a narcissistic nightmare who sank a Disney classic, or a talented young star caught in a no-win culture war? The film's failure exposed fault lines in Hollywood between nostalgia and progress, tradition and inclusion. As Disney rethinks its path and Zegler fights for her career, one thing's clear: fairy tales aren't just stories anymore, they're battlegrounds. What do you think? Should Disney keep remaking its classics, or is it time for something new? Drop your thoughts below and let's keep the conversation going.